Welcome once again to Geek Salad's Retro News from the Geek Salad Podcast. I'm Andy.
I'm Joe.
And Joe and I are flying solo tonight. I think it's the first time you and I have done anything, just the two of us together on this channel, which will be interesting, I think. So yeah, everyone else had a bag, because of prior commitments and whatnot.
Geez, I mean, God, I mean, let's talk about who has a social life these days. I mean, come on.
Jesus, don't you know there's a pandemic on? So anyway, I'm sorry we missed last week. It was kind of a busy week, and I have a feeling that the retro records might end up being an every other week kind of thing.
Yeah, especially with everything that's going on with Todd. I mean, Todd's like super busy and stuff.
Well, Todd's hella busy with the show that with this variety show that he's doing, or this review that he's doing. And Jim's schedule is not.
It's fluid. Jim's schedule. Let's just describe it as fluid at best.
Yeah, exactly. So, but Joe and I have got solid foundations, and we can totally do this tonight, right?
Yeah.
So tonight we are reviewing one of my all-time favorite albums, one of the 5 Desert Island albums. The Police's Zenyatta Mondatta.
Zenyatta Mondatta. Of course you have the vinyl.
Of course. Oh.
If it's one of your top 5 Desert Island, I suppose you should have the vinyl on it.
I have owned this album on everything, on all available medium except for 8-track.
I don't even think it came. I think by 1980s, 8-tracks were already gone. Were already gone the way of the dinosaur.
If you can remember through the haze of our drunk history episode, they kept making 8-tracks like
that's right. That's right. Yes. 80s. Yes.
But considering that my introduction to this album and my introduction to 8-tracks all happened throughout the Columbia House record, I'm actually amazed that when my mother was buying the 8-tracks, she didn't get this one, because this is right up her alley. However, it was my dad's Columbia Record and Tape Club subscription where he got this album.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I'm actually surprised that this is actually a part that your father actually actively chose this album.
Yeah.
Doesn't strike me as a new British new wave post-punk kind of guy.
It was, it was funny because in the early 80s, like his tape collection, we're not talking the record collection, we're talking the tape collection that he had when I was like 8-9 years old, the Columbia House stuff was very eclectic. Like we had, his was the first time I heard Journey's Escape. Tape record and tape club collection where I heard Foreigner 4. It was his that I heard the Steve Miller Band.
Oh,
and
well,
at the time, my dad was a big Boz Scaggs fan too. So,
well, it's funny, kind of, because my introduction to the Police wasn't Zenyatta Mondatta. It was actually a Synchronicity, and it was because it was part of my dad's record collection, which kind of shocked me because. If you meet my dad, and again, I always say this, if you meet my dad, the Police, just the Police in general, you would not think would be part of his record collection.
Right.
So I came into the Police through Synchronicity. It wasn't afterwards till, college and stuff like that I listened to Zenyatta Mondatta.
Yeah.
Zenyatta Mondatta.
Zenyatta Mondatta. Get it right.
Two nonsense words that they made up on the spot.
And it means nothing. They're just made up.
It means nothing. They just said because it rhythmically worked for them.
Yeah, and because it does. It just rolls off the tongue, which is interesting because when it rolls off the tongue, you think you're pronouncing it wrong.
Right.
But this was like the 1, 2, 3 punch for the Police. Now, keep in mind they released 5 studio albums.
It's amazing when you think about it that's all they released was 5 studio albums.
Yeah. But when you think about it, and you think about the first 2 albums, you think about Outland d'Amour and Regata de Blanc. In all honesty, there are songs, and keep in mind, the Police are one of my all-time favorite bands. They were the very first concert I ever saw.
Wow.
In 1983. But Outland d'Amour and Regata de Blanc very much. The songs kind of blend together so much that you would be forgiven for confusing what album each song was on.
Right.
You know, because they're so very similar. Starting with Zenyatta Mondatta. By the way, this is the 180 gram vinyl, so it's nice and heavy.
So yeah.
Starting with this album, they really branch out, and it becomes that next logical step that brings us to Ghost in the Machine, and then to Synchronicity.
Well, this is a really very much a transition album for them. This is, you can really say this is the end of the beginning for Police.
Yeah,
because it's still very much, and like I said, I came into the Police with Synchronicity, and then afterwards, just listening, being a fan of Sting and his solo work.
Yeah,
where I got kind of used to his music. A lot of early Police stuff sounds. I mean, the best way I could describe it is like thin. It's not a very full sound, and you can kind of see them kind of expanding beyond that with this album, where they go into a more kind of what I would consider traditionally produced album.
Yeah,
something with a little bit more full, a little bit more fullness. Because you notice in a lot of the drumming is very compressed drumming. There's not a lot of like, it's a very compressed. It's not, the drumming itself doesn't have fullness to it. It's just like it hits the note and it stops. There's like no reverb or anything like that. And the guitar playing is very subdued, and the vocals tend to be subdued, but the chorus, which is very much a reggae thing, I think, where the chorus is very subdued, but then very loud in the during the chorus.
Yeah, I think that musically, honestly, this is their best album. And that's not to take away from Ghost in the Machine or Synchronicity, which are both amazing albums. But I think with this one, what's interesting about this album is, with the exception of the actual two released singles, Don't Stand So Close to Me and Do Da Da Da.
Yeah.
This doesn't have much of that radio play appeal that a band on their third album trying to make it in the United States would have. I think that's balls to do, quite honestly.
Well, by this time they were fairly established, at least in the UK and Europe. I think I think this is where they first kind of started branching out globally. I think this was their first US tour occurred right before this album, or
they toured before that. They toured in I think 78 or 79 because the live double album they put out like 20 years ago. One of the discs actually was recorded by WBCN in Boston in like the late 70s.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's the sound. It's still very much they're still very much tied to their roots in terms of their sound.
Yeah,
very much the new British new wave, reggae rock sound that established them. Whereas the subsequent album, Ghost in the Machine and Synchronicity, was very much a pop oriented, more mainstream sound.
Yeah,
made to generate hits. Whereas this is still kind of that's why it only generated two hit singles, really, when you think about it.
Well, yeah. And I don't know, this is the first time they really allowed for a lot of collaboration between the band members. Both Andy Summers and Stuart Copeland got to write songs on here. In fact, one of them, Andy Summers' song "Behind My Camel," which is purely instrumental, won a Grammy.
Sting hates, by the way.
Sting hates it. He actually
he didn't even play the bass on it. He didn't even play on it.
No. By the way, I looked up the bass tab for it. Literally one note.
That's what happens when you have the guitar player to play the bass.
It's 12 fret E. Just bam, 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 bam. Yeah. But you think about this though, for an album like this that is one of their best regarded albums, has one of their best regarded singles. Don't Stand So Close to Me is easily identifiable.
Right.
The songs on here, like the actual, there's a lot of deep cuts in this album, and they're all really good.
Yeah, it's very hard. It's very hard to find anything that you consider really consider a filler.
Yeah. But it's interesting too that just the richness of a lot of the sounds, especially with Andy Summers. I think this might be some of Andy Summers' best work throughout his career with the Police. You know, We Ride Behind My Camel's got that great, like, just that very ethereal guitar. The guitar work in Driven to Tears is great too. A lot of nice echo on there. A lot of nice reverb on there. What's the other? I have the whole album here, so I'm trying to remember the track listings. Man in the
Canary in the
Suitcase.
Coal Mine. Canary in the Coal Mine is another standout. That's a song I think could have been a single if it was released.
Canary in the Coal Mine and Man in the Suitcase could have very well have been singles.
Yeah.
But I like that I like their deep cut status though, because they're personal favorites. I adore those songs, but I'm kind of glad that they didn't get that overplay.
No, because I mean, when you think about it, "Don't Stand So Close to Me" really is kind of. It does get overplayed a lot, and you kind of get sick of hearing about the story. You know, all the like theories and the stories behind. I mean, you know what the story is, but everybody's like, "Oh, is it autobiographical?" And like, no, it's a song of it's just a song. Sometimes a song is just a song.
Sting was a teacher, however.
He was a teacher, but yeah, exactly. But even he said, it's mostly more about even though it's like, okay, well, we were musicians, we had blonde, we were blonde superstars, and all the groupies were young, younger than us. So it's like, okay, but here's a little interesting factoid about "Don't Stand So Close to Me" is like. Everybody, Sting did the backing vocals or did the intro vocals for
"Money for Nothing."
"Money for Nothing" by Dire Straits. Well, he accidentally used the same melody for "I Want My MTV."
Don't stand so.
Yeah, and he said,
"I want my MTV." Yep.
It's sort of a similar melody, and nobody noticed it until they started playing it. And then one of his lawyers caught on to it. So they had to. So because of that, they went back to Dire Straits and said, "Hey, you got to give Sting co-writing credit for "Money for Nothing," which he did. And it's actually it's the only song in any Dire Straits album where anybody besides Mark Knopfler gets a co-writing credit.
Huh.
But here's the thing, and thanks to Todd and everybody else, I've now made it my personal goal to find because the first few pressings of the album don't have the Sting co-write on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It wasn't until like later pressings, until like I think like the second pressing or something. Halfway through the first pressing, they decided they had to add the co-writing credit. So I made it my personal mission to find a Brother in Arms album without the Sting co-writing credit. So if you're watching, Todd, and you're on the lookout.
And by the way, speaking of Todd did want me to let us know his extensive feelings about this album. And I quote, "I really like this album." Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, Todd.
Yeah.
Thanks for the insight.
Man, I get so happy listening to this. Like even something like "Bombs Away," which is the Stuart Copeland penned. Song. It's got a kicky little chorus. It's it's just the sound bounces, which is really, really nice. And quite honestly, one of my all-time favorite Police songs is the instrumental "The Other Way of Stopping," which closes out the album.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned "Bombs Away" because this is really kind of one of their first album where they start getting political.
Yeah,
with their lyrics. Like you mentioned, "Bombs Away," and then "Driven to Tears," was about the famine in Western Africa. Yeah. That's, I guess really deeply affected Sting. So, but you start seeing them move away from being kind of a localized British band, British concerns, to seeing, hey, there's a lot of shit going on in the world that we.
Exactly. Exactly. It's interesting too. "Shadows in the Rain," which is, from this album, appears on Sting's first solo album, "Dream of the Blue Turtles." And it's different because the Police version is it's darker.
Yeah.
The all of the vocals are run through a reverberator, so that they're very heavily altered. And the piano, it really is it's the piano and the guitar that just really kind of punch that up. And then Sting does an up-tempo jazz version of it on Dream of the Blue Turtles.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing how just making that change kind of changed the whole feel of the song.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, on his live album Bring On the Night, he also does When the World Is Running Down.
Mm-hmm.
That's a song I didn't really care for when I was a kid, but now I just better appreciate it. I love how much goes into that song.
Yeah.
Yeah. The funny thing is, this album's like 38 minutes long, so it's actually
well, you know what? It's funny. It goes by fast, especially when you realize that a majority of the songs are under 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And the do and the da that's the longest song on the album is at 4 minutes. Everything else is
Thank you, Kurt. Yes, you're late to the party, but guess what I've got? 180 gram of pure vinyl goodness, man. Thank you for joining us, Kurt. This is we've been talking about this album. One of my absolute favorites. Joe, continue your thought, please.
Well, no, it's like I said. The do da is their longest song at like just over 4 minutes.
Yeah.
On this album, but most of the albums generally run under 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So if you're not paying attention, the album will fly by.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you'll pick up the Don't Stand So Close to Me and the songs that you really want to listen to. But if you're not paying attention, it's just like it flies by, and before you know it, you're like, oh, wait a minute, the song, it's over already.
Yeah. Oh, and Kurt also mentions here that he has an original pressing of it. You son of a bitch. I do, Kurt, though, have original pressings of both Synchronicity and Ghost in the Machine. Unfortunately, my sleeve for Ghost in the Machine, I think a rodent might have gotten to it because there's a little bit nibbled out of the corner of the sleeve. The album still plays wonderfully. And my copy of Synchronicity is one of the rare original pressings that was actually pressed with a black-purple vinyl. So When you look at it, it's black. But when you hold the light behind it, it will actually shine purple.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention for Jim's benefit that I have an original pressing of Led Zeppelin 1, so.
Yeah, we know that. And I hope you like the taste of chloroform, my friend, because eventually Jim's going to ask you if this rag smells like it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that, you mentioned, it's funny, you mentioned about the length, we were talking about the length of the album. And on Monday, I drove my daughter to school. She goes to a school that's about 20 minutes away from my house. She's actually right near where you live. And we drove her got home, album finished up.
Right, yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I listened to this album twice in the last 2 days. I listened to it on the way. It takes me about 40 minutes to get to work from my house, and I listened to it on the way to work. I left the house, put it on, got to work just as the album finished.
Yeah.
And then I listened to it during my lunch break, which is half an hour. Listened to it during my lunch break. I had my lunch. Album had another like 5 minutes left. So.
You know what the interesting thing about this album compared to other Police albums, and I think the same can honestly be kind of sort of be said for Ghost in the Machine. There were no down tempo ballads on this album. I mean, every little thing she does in Magic on Ghost in the Machine is a ballad of sorts, but it's not down tempo.
Right.
There quite honestly isn't a down tempo song on this album. Even the dark stuff has got a bit of a.
It's that new waves reggae rock kind of mentality.
Yeah.
I mean, you very rarely find down tempo reggae rock.
Yeah. No, you don't. And what the funny thing is too, because I know a lot of the information you're quoting from is from the Wikipedia page, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I read the same article. But it's funny because I don't hear a lot of reggae in this album as much as I did in the first two albums. The first two albums have a ton of reggae jams in there. It's very influenced by that, which is funny for three white dudes from England.
But again, like you gotta remember, I'm used to everything from synchronicity afterwards.
Yeah.
For me, that's the majority. Again, Synchronicity was my first Police album. I listened to Sting, and it wasn't until, like I said, college I got into, I listened to Zenyatta Mondatta. And by then I was like, oh yeah, this is a very, when you're used to that, you listen to Zenyatta Mondatta, it's like, oh yeah, that's very reggae to me. At least my conception of what reggae is, considering
exactly.
I'm from Boston.
Yeah, exactly. What dude from Boston?
Yeah.
Right on ahead. Don't get a whole lot of reggae in Puerto Rico there, do they, Joe?
Not really.
No.
And that's stuff I'd want to listen to anyways.
Exactly. But it is funny though, because there's a lot of down-tempo ballads in the first two albums, and then their biggest hit, Every Breath You Take, down-tempo ballad about stalking. Just to be aware, if you ever consider that to be your wedding song,
Nope. Not at all.
Yeah, I just truly, this album just brings me joy. I really was happy that we could talk about this one. I was kind of worried I was going to be going solo tonight for one reason or another, and I'm like, I could totally take over and do whatever album I want. Which is when you see The Church's Starfish as the album review. If you see that, it's just Andy flying solo. Maybe Todd, but it's just gonna be me probably. So, Todd would listen to it. But yeah, this is one of those things. If you are a fan of the Police or a fan of Sting, or more so a fan of the Police, check. I mean, they're on Spotify. You can definitely check them out there. Go to support your local record store. I did find out, by the way, and this is thanks to my wife, Zenyatta Mondatta, the repressing of Zenyatta Mondatta, the one I have, the 180 gram copy of that, is insanely hard to find.
Really?
I managed finding it on Amazon, as like luck would have it, and I try not to buy my records from Amazon, but yeah, this was insane because this was like the top of her Christmas list for me, was getting this album from Kurt here says he'd love to see Andy improvise. That day will come. Kurt, one day that day will come. God damn it, it will. And you'll all be here to see it.
You'll be sorry.
Oh yeah. No, I've already found somebody to talk about Justice League's Snyder Cut with me, because I know, like, nobody has the stomach to watch it, and I'm doing it in parts. But yeah,
I can't do that to myself.
You haven't watched the original yet?
Nope.
Our DC guy, our resident Geek Salad DC guy, he's like,
I can't. Zack Snyder ruined DC movies for me. The only saving grace was Shazam.
Yeah. And you haven't seen Birds of Prey yet, have you?
I have not. I have not seen Suicide Squad. I have not seen Birds of Prey. I have not seen Wonder Woman 1984, and neither cut of the Justice League.
Okay, I will highly recommend on our record review. I'm going to highly recommend Birds of Prey. It is my number 2 DC film.
Wow,
it is good.
Yeah. So the only one I'm really looking forward to is the Batman. Matt Reeves, the Batman. But
the Batman.
But that's neither here nor there.
The Batman.
But anyways,
Neil Batman. So yeah, I think Joe and I are both in agreement here. This is a fantastic album that you absolutely need to go run out and get. Kurt,
this is a very good album. This is a must-have for any Police fan.
This is absolutely a must-have.
And this is for the true Police fan. This album is for the true Police fan, not the synchronicity. I love synchronicity, and I love all of those things albums. No, this is, if you're a true Police fan, this is the album.
Well, okay, and you know what? The funny thing about Synchronicity is because it is their biggest selling album,
but it's their most mainstream album.
It's their most mainstream album. But here's the thing. I guarantee most people that only know the Police from Synchronicity can still only name one song off that album. Everybody will forget. Everybody forgets that King of Pain was the second hit single off that
Yeah.
album. As
And
well
actually, and
as
you know what? I think that's a better single than Every Breath You Take.
I agree. I agree. And the weird thing is too is that Synchronicity 2 was never actually released as a single per se. It was made as a video, but
Right.
it was never really formally released as a
Well, I mean,
single.
yeah.
At
Well,
least in the States.
yeah. This was a MTV at its height when they were trying to push that videos was videos was going to make singles go the way of the dinosaur. But
Right.
you saw how that worked out.
Yeah. I mean, Synchronicity is not a bad album at all. In fact, it's the best song. It's the best album with the worst song.
Yeah.
Mother is a terrible song. We'll all agree.
But again, it's one of those things where Synchronicity, because it's their most mainstream, it's their most accessible album,
Yeah.
It's whereas whereas their first three albums are really kind of niche. If you're a Police fan, you're going to enjoy them. If you're not a general fan of new wave British music and stuff like that, it's going to be kind of a hard pill to swallow.
But here's the thing though, with that, it's interesting. And I kind of learned this early on in my love of the Police career, that I had heard songs on the radio that I was not aware were Police songs until I saw them perform them, and it's like, wait, So Lonely is a Police song? Next to You is a Police song? I mean, I knew about Message in a Bottle, but it's like, Next to You is a Police? Really? I kind of knew about Roxanne, but yeah, that is just funny. That is just really funny because it is that thing. It's like the band Squeeze.
Yeah.
You might not know you've heard a Squeeze song. You've heard a Squeeze
song. You've heard it, but you just don't know that you've heard it, or you don't know.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, you can't connect the dots.
It's the amazing thing about late 70s, early 80s British New Wave. You know you've heard it, you just don't know who you heard it from.
Another little interesting factoid: Dire Straits opened for Police at a punk rock festival in the UK.
Nice.
True. I think it was 1977 when Dire Straits was just starting to get off the ground.
Oh wow, that's funny.
Yeah.
In fact, there was this movie called CBGB, which had Alan Rickman in it, and it's about the club, the New York club.
Yeah. Well, it looks like Andy dropped.
As closing the movie out. What's that?
Okay. No, you froze for a second there. I thought you dropped.
I just saw myself blip. So has it been 5 years? But
lots changed, Andy.
The closing band in the movie was the Police.
Oh, really?
And as they're kind of like doing the tracking shot out of the club.
Yeah.
And just to doing the crane shot up to the side. But yeah, it was the Police that also got their American start at CBGB.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. Just like one of the Talking Heads. Other bands that we will eventually talk about.
Right at some point, yeah. We'll get to them at some point.
Hey, Parallel Lines was my very first piece of vinyl.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I went back to listen to that a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't appreciate it then. I appreciate it now.
Appreciate it now, yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Considering it, the other thing too is that I think Debbie Harry was my very first rock and roll crush, and she was in her mid-30s.
Yeah, it's amazing to think how that she was. Well, you think about it, she'd been around the scene since the mid-70s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Before that, I think.
Way before then, yeah. So.
Kurt's got a comment here about the CBGB movie that it was pretty enjoyable. It was nice to see a tribute to the New York punk scene. It is the movie itself. I honestly had a hard time kind of digesting it, mainly because all I really recall from the movie is Alan Rickman kind of just sitting in one of those big cast iron tubs, and then he had a dog that just kept shitting everywhere. That's all I remember from the movie, and it probably is only 3-4 seconds of actual film time, but for some odd reason, that's what I remember. Oh, and Rupert Grint is in it.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember if he was one of the members of the Germs, featuring the Foo Fighters' Pat Smear. So yeah, I do. You know what? This album is an A++ for me. I love this album. And I hope at some point we can talk other Police albums. I know like Jim's favorite Police album is Ghost in the Machine, so I wouldn't mind. I
I'm pretty sure
this conversation at some point. What's that?
I'm pretty sure we're gonna hit the big three. So I mean these are this is going into the you can say this is the first of the big three.
It is the first of the big three. Absolutely is. It absolutely is.
Yeah. So I'm sure
number one in the UK. And what did the Wikipedia like? They wrote this, they like completely like soup to nuts on this album in 40 days.
Yeah.
It was
and
really
they had a
fast
budget
and they hated this album.
They had a budget of like £35,000, something like that.
And the second they finished, they had like the last piece of tape was spliced. They were on the road touring.
Yep.
Man.
Yeah, you don't see that anymore these days.
Oh no, you don't see albums anymore either. But that's beside the point, right?
Good point.
Damn you, music scene.
Well, no, but you mentioned that, but it's funny that this came out. This was only recorded in 40 days. Came out in 1980, and then Ghost in the Machine came out the very next year.
Yep.
And then it was only like a year and a half till Synchronicity came out.
83, yeah.
Yeah, because Ghost in the Machine came out in late 80. It came out in fall of 81.
Yeah.
And Synchronicity came out in like mid 83. So it's like, yeah, it was not long between. They did not take their time between albums.
Yeah, no, they did not. And you know what though, I'm thankful for that because in the 5 albums that we got, they're all excellent albums.
Yeah.
Nothing below an A- in my book for any of that. But this middle album is, I think, their crown jewel.
Yeah.
So, anything else we have to say about this, Kurt? Do you have anything else in the comments that you want to let us know about Zenyatta Mondatta, your favorite and my favorite? So, while we're waiting to see if Kurt actually types anything up here, I want to let you know that Joe and I host a little podcast called Geek Salad. You can get us wherever you get your podcasts. So that's Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, you name it. Last week, we released our episode on our potpourri subjects that were just too short for an actual full episode.
Yeah, that was good. That was very enjoyable.
You know what? And the funny thing is, with Kurt being kind of in our audience tonight, Kurt started listening to all the episodes about Benny Schaff's awful book.
Oh no, Ben!
I dig it. It's probably one of my favorite new wave. I'm gonna put this up here. I dig it. It's probably one of my favorite new wave albums. Yes, yes, it is. Now, Kurt, I'm going to challenge you if you haven't listened to this yet. And I know it kind of goes against the grain in recommending albums, because usually you don't recommend a best of. But if you love British new wave of this era, check out Squeeze Singles 45 and Under. It is nothing short of a miracle in terms of a collection of great Brit new wave. It's very English. But I think you might really dig that too. But what were we talking about? Oh yeah, we were talking about Behind the Bastards.
Behind the Bastards, yeah.
I am very tempted at the next. Yeah.
I've actually, I just today I finished listening to basically 95% of all the Behind the Bastards episodes.
Wow, you went deep.
Oh, I'm back at the very beginning because I went through all through 2020, all through 2019, and about halfway through 2018. So
yeah,
I've gone all the way
Bill
back.
Cosby episodes yet?
No, I haven't gotten to that. I just finished the King Leopold episode.
Which one?
The King Leopold.
Oh yeah.
The bastard, the first modern bastard.
Yep. Yeah, no, I'm so tempted now that whenever we do podcast promos, I really kind of want to do that. But you know who won't kill their mother in the bathtub?
Exactly.
the wonderful companies that produce our show.
Products.
Products. And now, I'm trying to find more ways of tying Black Rifle coffee jokes into our.
Oh, God.
Nothing better than Nazi coffee, right?
Nazi coffee. Even though they try to disavow. Yeah, okay.
Sure. But yeah, Joe talks about that. I had a great time talking about the documentary Action Park, which we got a great review from oh, good Lord, why can't I remember the name of that podcast? I'm looking it up right now. Guys, I apologize, but Quit the Build podcast. He gave us a great review on iTunes. And he was like, I can talk about Action Park all day. And I'm like, dude, I am with you. I have to watch the movie, and 2, I have to watch the documentary because this sounds batshit insane.
Every time I think about Action Park, I keep putting 14-year-old Andy in that park and just wondering what
as an employee or as a visitor.
As a visitor, as a child.
I'd be like
wait that 1 year before I could then get a job there for beer and weed and puss. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we host that podcast. We also on this channel offer retro movie reviews. This week, Mike and I reviewed a not so retro movie. We discussed Raya and the Last Dragon, which is available on Disney Plus, and Mike went to the theater to see it.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, yep. Wow.
He found one of the 2 open theaters in Massachusetts.
Well, I just got an email today that O'Neill is going to be opening up tomorrow. So.
Yeah, and I still don't feel safe doing that.
No, I don't either. I mean, I pre-registered for the vaccination, so.
We'll see. So did I. And you, me, and Catherine are going to go get our one comorbidity asses that shot earlier than the people on April 19th, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Thank God we're not 100% healthy. So yes, check out all of our stuff on YouTube and on all your pod chasers. Also, don't forget to check out our TeePublic store, where you can get amazing t-shirts like this one here. Go to teepublic.com, keyword Geek Salad Podcast. And if you want to know what our daily goings on are, check us out. We are most active on Twitter at Geek Salad Radio and on Facebook at Geek Salad Podcast. So check us out. We are well over 2,000 followers, so join the party. I gotta get.
We'll always take more.
Very busy couple of weeks, so I have not been as present as I should be on Twitter, but that will change.
More power to you. That toxic waste. I don't know how you tolerate that toxic wasteland.
You know what? It's like when you have a sore tooth, and you can't help but stick your tongue in it.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, that's the only analogy I have, Joe. But it's like I can't. Honestly, it's my lifeblood at this point, and if I can't drink, toxic sad boy tears, then what good am I?
That's true. Good point.
So anyway, until next time. Oh, and by the way, Kurt, thank you so much for being in the audience today and giving us some amazing comments. Definitely, I love talking music. I love that you also love talking music. So thanks for joining us tonight. Just like with the movies that I think we're going to do. I think this summer we're doing unnecessary sequels, and Kurt had mentioned some. We're going to bring him in on that. I got to find an album or two that Kurt might be interested in joining us for.
Well, we'll take suggestions. Why not?
It is a date, man. It is a date. So anyway, until next time, I'm Andy.
I'm Joe.
Go forth and be nerdful. And don't forget to support your local record store, for the love of God. Thank
Products!
you.